So I'm starting this video with a definition, as I think we should all be on the same page. Terrorism is generally defined as the unlawful use or threat of violence against civilians or property intended to intimidate a population or coerce a government for political, religious, or ideological goals. It usually involves serious harm, like endangering life or damaging property or disrupting systems for a broader cause. So, violence, fear, an ideology, and a goal. Terrorism, in other words, is not just about what happens, it's about why it happens and what changes because of it. And if that's our definition, then I think we need to talk more about the depth of terrorism, particularly in Britain. Because as we know, what happened at Bondi Beach this week was terrorism. And so are a lot of other things that we've been too scared to name. So if you've watched any of my videos before, especially the ones that I've done in the wake of tragedy abroad, like the assassination of Charlie Kirk, you'll know that every time something like this happens, I find myself looking closer to home. This will be a slightly longer video. There is a lot to say, so I do hope that you will stick with me through it and stay to the end and tell me what you think, because I really do value your opinion. It's not because I believe I have any of the answers, but because I don't think we can keep avoiding this conversation. So, we're always told that the best way to respond to terror is just to carry on, to get back on the tube, go to that concert, walk through the market with your head held high. Don't let them win, they say. But let's be honest, for most of us, the only way we carry on now is by adapting. Because terror isn't something we just see now, it's something we live around. The anti-car repellent barriers at Christmas markets and on bridges, the guards outside churches and synagogues and cities. And I don't know about you, but I haven't felt safe or calm in years. We're told that we must go on, must stay strong, must be brave. But it's hard to be brave when you're not allowed to name what you're afraid of. We walk through cities now like they're just obstacle courses. I wear longer coats even in summer. I think twice about wearing something tight fitting or too feminine. I don't go to late night events anymore, and I notice if someone lingers near a bin, and I clock who gets off at my stop. And I know I'm not alone. Women don't feel safe. Christian and Jewish communities don't feel safe. Heck, most ordinary Brits don't feel particularly safe. And we've normalized that like it's just part of the furniture. We've started designing our lives around terror. And I said this in another video, and I'll say it again here, but you cannot build a country on tolerance, because without shared values, tolerance becomes permission. Permission to bring a fundamental change to the life in this country. Permission to hide behind claims of racism when called out for anti-British behaviour. We've been forced to live numbly alert. Every single time something horrific happens, you'll hear the same phrase trotted out again. Diversity is our strength. It sounds like a Coca-Cola slogan where everyone's holding hands on a mountain. Diversity only works when it's built on shared values of what a country is for. And that's why I find thoughts and prayers such an empty phrase now. It's just the beige cardigan of political language. We've started using it as a PR approved way to avoid the responsibility that we are not addressing the root evil of this in our country. So why don't we call the grooming gang scandal what it really is? Domestic terrorism. And I know the alliteration of grooming gang sounds nothing like the industrial scale abuse unit it really was and still is in this country. That's just the problem, isn't it? We gave it a name that fits into headlines, a name that makes it less shocking. So what actually happened? 2 generations of white British girls were raped, drugged, trafficked, filmed, and silenced. Some of these victims have never been found. They were all tortured physically and mentally, systemically, across years and across towns, chosen by these gangs because of their race. And when it was reported, the authorities covered it up. Police even threatened other police officers who tried to expose it. Politicians found ways to sidestep the concerns. Some referred to it as a dog whistle issue. Councils covered those concerns up. Why? Because they thought it was better to overlook this behaviour towards children and women of this country. They were afraid of offending the communities where the perpetrators were based, afraid of being called racist. Why? Why were they more afraid of being called out as racist than to deny these children and women the justice they were owed? Why would they not state the truth about what was happening? Because rape has always been a weapon of war, a tactic to shame, silence, and dismantle communities. That's what makes the government, police, and council silence not just cowardice, but complicit in this atrocity. Because if the girls were victims of terrorism, then the ones who stayed silent weren't just cowards, they were collaborators. And so these authorities sacrificed the livelihoods of children and women and turned a blind eye to this domestic terrorism. But if that's not terrorism, if that's not ideological violence against a civilian population designed to intimidate, subjugate, and destroy, then what is it? The scars that those girls will carry will last a lifetime. Many won't marry. Many may never become mothers, never rebuild a sense of home or trust authorities in this country again. And the communities that enabled it, they didn't just fail to help, they protected the perpetrators, and they enabled these acts by their silence. So I want to ask, when an entire demographic of young working class, mainly girls, is brutalized, systemically raped, and ignored in their own country by the influence of political correctness brought over by tolerance over justice, how? How is that not a disruption of a system? We are living through an era where calling something what it is can cost you everything: your platform, your job, your reputation. And I want to be so clear here. I'm not saying any of this to stoke hatred, but I want truth more. And if we don't face this now, then when will we? Because the only thing more dangerous than extremism is pretending that you can't see it. And no one in power wants to admit that. Not our royals, not our politicians, because it's easier to light a candle than say the word Islamism. It's easier to tweet thoughts and prayers than to ask why churches and synagogues need armed guards in central London. And so we stay silent. But in that cultural silence, fear and rage grows. And that's how extremism wins. Not just by what it does, but by how terrified it makes everyone else of being able to even name it. And while we're too scared to name the threat, today, as I film this, the government has announced new plans to tackle violence against women and girls through misogyny awareness classes in schools. But how? How can we talk about misogyny without talking about the cultural norms that we've imported or the spiritual frameworks that we've erased? We told boys not to trust Christianity, not to believe in national service or duty or honour. We shamed any traditional vision of masculinity. Then we wondered why a generation of young men are turning angry, violent, or ideologically lost. The Western project, this beautiful, flawed experiment of democracy and liberty, assumes shared foundations. Freedom of speech, yes, but also freedom from violence. Religious expression, yes, but not theocracy. But multiculturalism in the West has too often been about importing ideologies that don't believe in those things, or worse, giving them cultural immunity because they don't. The values of the Middle East and Far East are not the same as ours, and they never were. And yet we act as if those tensions don't matter, because we've watched once beautiful, thriving countries collapse into extremist hellscapes. Persia, Lebanon, Syria, Afghanistan, North Korea, Russia turning into the USSR, all fell to ideologies that promised justice, purpose, and belonging, only to offer violence, silencing, and spiritual starvation. All of them were destroyed by extremism, religious or political, it doesn't matter. Because it always starts the same way. Don't say that. Don't notice that. Don't make them feel unwelcome. No Christian country in the modern world has ever looked like Taliban-era Afghanistan, where ideology becomes tyranny. And that raises the question that no one seems to want to ask. If we're importing those same ideologies into Britain, where will it end? We talk about Britain's Christian values like they're just decorative. soft furnishings for a civilized society. Because in Britain, Christian values have been twisted into this open all hours buffet of compassion without discernment. You're allowed to be disgusted by Christian priests abusing children, and you should be. But if you raise your voice about another religious ideology that's enabling violence and destruction of our culture, safety, and security, suddenly you're the extremist. You're called hateful, as if asking for moral consistency is a hate crime. So when the news of the Bondi Beach terror attack broke, I kind of think we all just knew. A group of innocent people celebrating faith, joy, or just life, and someone decides that they deserve to die. Now, I don't know enough about the internal politics of Australia. I'm not going to pretend that I understand every detail on their culture or immigration system, but we've made a world where evil is explained away before it's condemned, where we teach tolerance but we forget boundaries, where we say thoughts and prayers but we forget action, where leaders panic more about upsetting the ideologues than getting real justice for the victims. Meanwhile, people die or are wounded. Families are fragmented, and 2 generations of working class British girls are still living in the wreckage of an industrial scale abuse network. And we still won't call it terrorism. And if the West falls, spiritually, culturally, or politically, it won't be because we were defeated by foreign powers. It'll be because we failed to address all forms of terrorism, and we let domestic terrorism destroy the fabric of our society. We let it hide under the terms political correctness and diversity. So, if this video made you feel something, I do hope you'll tell me. I really do value your opinion. And if you think it's time that we start speaking more honestly about what's happening in our country, then I hope you'll help me speak louder. Thank you so much. I was about to upload this, and then I saw what Kemi Badenoch, leader of the Tories, said in Parliament yesterday. And whatever you think of her or her politics or the party, I think that it matters that she said this on record in PMQs.
What happened at Bondi Beach was an atrocity, but words of solidarity are not enough. We know the evil we face. Islamic extremism is a threat to Western civilization. It abuses our democracies and subverts our institutions. It is incompatible with British values. So it is not enough just to protect Jewish communities. We must drive Islamic extremism out of this country.
Because if even our leaders are beginning to speak clearly, then maybe there is hope that 2026 will be the year that we can finally start addressing these things.